Karen tells me, her delivery driver, to pay for food because her son is autistic. So I'm a delivery driver for a major food delivery company in a major college town in Texas where everyone loves maroon. Normally, the job isn't bad, it pays pretty well and customers are generally fine, though you'll always have idiots in every service job. This, however, surpassed anything I'd ever experienced before. I got an order alert on my phone. Relatively simple, but expensive order. We drivers love expensive orders, by the way, and it was from a restaurant nearby. In the portion for delivery instructions, the customer explains that I need to call her once I arrive, as ringing the doorbell, like I normally would disturb her autistic son. Okay, no problem at all. I received therapy for sensory issues when I was a kid, so I'm going to be even more sympathetic to that than the average person. I receive the order, drive over to the house in a nice part of town, and give the customer a call. A younger woman answers and tells me to come up to the door. I do so, and here enters the entitled mother, who strangely was fairly attractive and did not have the typical Karen haircut. I say, "Here's your order, ma'am. Is there anything else I can help you with today?"
Yes, my son is autistic and people like you don't understand how difficult it is to raise him. I shouldn't have to pay this much for food. Can you give me a discount?
I'm sorry, ma'am, the app calculates your order total, not me. It's already been paid for. She did not like that answer. Her face changed from a smug smirk into a snarl. I suppose I didn't realize how ridiculous the idea that people pay for their own food is. She says,
"Well, why don't you pay for it then? I'm not sure if you heard, but my son is autistic, and it's your fault that he's still hungry."
"I'm sorry, Mom, but that goes against our policy. If I paid for your order, I'd probably be fired."
"Good, you're a useless driver anyway. You're disgusting. My son is starving to death. Since I've had to go through so much trouble with you, you should tip me."
My app has a setting that while you're in the process of taking an order to a customer, they'll assign you another one at the same time if there's activity. Thankfully, this saved me. I just say, "Can't do that, Mom. Here's your order." And I placed the food gently on the ground between us and jogged back to my car. She was shouting something unintelligible, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. So much for not disturbing her autistic son. Unsurprisingly, she gave me a 1-star review. You tip online, so I got a small tip. I contacted support about it the next day. I said, "Yeah, I had a crazy lady yesterday, started demanding that I pay for her order and even that I tip her. Really rude, not sure what the deal was. And I knew what the deal was, that's why I'm here." The service lady says, "Which order was it?" And I gave her the order number and the address.
Yikes, you're the third person to complain about her. 1 or 2, we take it with a grain of salt, but 3, you're probably out. I'll try to get her deactivated. If so, her review will be off your record.
Thanks, appreciate it. I feel like the entire world is better off now that she won't get deliveries from us anymore. But was the cost worth it? That remains to be seen. Am I the jerk? Not a jerk. This woman is either cheap or actually desperate enough to just try and pull this on a different service. And when they inevitably stop her from ordering there too, she's just going to move all of her crap to a local grocery shop until she's inevitably banned there as well. It honestly sounds a bit like something is fishy here. As the author has mentioned, she's fine with making a big noisy scene and clearly doesn't have that much of a grip on reality to begin with. If her son is on the spectrum, she's just kind of nuts for expecting that much of a deal on her food. And if the nagging thought at the back of my skull is correct and she's just fabricating or exaggerating things to get free stuff, she's also a garbage person. Look, I don't care how badly you're doing, the drivers in these services have really raw deals as it is. Don't go taking it off their small earnings. I hope you've moved on to better things, author. Am I the jerk for not correcting my son when he told off his stepfather, also my husband? I've been married to my husband, Jeremy, since my son, Chris, was 8. Chris is now 17. My husband and Chris have a fantastic relationship, despite what this story might imply. My birthday is in 2 weeks, and I honestly haven't put much thought into it. My husband is not a gift giver. He says he has a hard time figuring out what to get and doesn't want to waste money on something that people won't use. He's also a practical person, whereas I'm by far the sentimental type. So even when he does get me something, it's something that I can use every day. Which, no big deal, obviously, but I've requested some sentimental pieces and he just never gets them. So I pretty much gave up on ever asking for anything, and it did really bother me for a number of years, but now it truly doesn't bother me, usually. Well, my son graduated a year early and doesn't start college until next year. So he currently works 2 jobs by his own choice. I've asked him to cut back and enjoy his teen years before adulthood, but working just seems to make him happy. So he works at a mechanic shop and a junkyard. Most of his buddies work there too, so at least he's getting some time in with friends. Well, my husband hates spending money and tries inflicting that on us. He lives as frugally as possible and saves every single dime that he can. He could retire right this second and wouldn't be able to get through all the money he's saved. My son comes home last night with 3 of his buddies that work with him, and he's like, "I know it's not for 2 more weeks, but I can't wait for you to open this, so please open it now." Him and his buddies are snickering about it, so I thought it would be some gag gift. But much to my surprise, it was a huge, absolutely gorgeous wall piece that has photo frames and shelves built in. My husband immediately went, "Wow, how much did that cost? That could have gone into an IRA ROS account." I don't know if I said that right. My son immediately shot cold daggers at my husband and says, "It's truly none of your business what I do with my money, and since you outright refuse to buy my mother nice things that she absolutely deserves, I'll make sure she gets something nice. And for the record, we made this ourselves. It didn't cost us anything." My husband just stops talking, looking at me and waiting for me to say something. And when I don't, he shakes his head and walks off. After the boys leave, he says I allowed Chris to embarrass him in front of other people, and I should have said something. I simply told him that Chris was right. Am I the jerk? Kinda sounds like your husband is just embarrassed that his stepson showed him up for being such a miserly gift giver, who only seems to hoard gold like a dragon. The author goes to a great deal of trouble to say that they don't mind their husband's behavior, but it sure sounds like they have a lot of clear ideas of what they would like that their husband completely ignores. Oh well, this isn't the Rate Your Marriage channel, I suppose. If we're going to talk about rude and disrespectful behavior, Stepdad has to check himself for asking how much a gift costs in front of the fricking recipient. Not cool. Also, the son is right, it's his money. Also kind of implying that Chris was an idiot for spending a bunch of time and effort on a really thoughtful gift that his mum clearly appreciated is not a great point in Stepdad's favor. The author and Chris aren't jerks. The post isn't about whether Stepdad is or not, but it kinda seems like he is. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. How a brat of a kid ended up causing a movie-style chase scene. Life is crazy. 3 days ago, I was in New York where I got a story about an entitled dad, his children, and the deli waitress who was an absolute legend. This part of my history will be important later. Now, we're in Santa Monica with an entire entitled parade going on. I landed in California 2 days ago, and one of the minor reasons I'm here is because Pokémon Go is very popular at the famous boardwalk. Let me tell you right now, this story would have ended differently had I not had my friends with me. So I'm traveling the US these next few weeks because I'm looking into colleges to go after my current one. I traveled here to California, landed, and met my best friend Frank and my other friend Paula, where we all agreed to share a room on the coast because it's expensive as frick. Yesterday, I went to the University of California, got my info, and we left. That evening, the 3 of us decided to check out the boardwalk, and we were heavy Pokémon Go players. We decided we'd split up and see what we could catch, do some gyms, a few other things. 8 p.m. rolls around and we're all hanging out again near a food vendor with our new friends and gym battles. That's when I notice these other 3 kids across from us have their phones out, and the boy looks angry. He starts storming over to me, so I nudge Frank for him to notice. This kid goes, "Frick you! I can't fight this. What's your deal anyway? You got no life or something?" The 2 girls come walking over while Paula is now in on this. Frank says, "Hey, what the hell's your problem? You looking for a fight?" This strange boy shows us his phone, and it's the gym that we all captured together with our Pokémon in them. As a disclaimer, my Pokémon is at 3,500 CP, and Frank has one at almost 4,000, and Paula has hers at 3,000. The boys' presumed sisters chime in at this point. The first one says, "Give Big Bro his title back." "Yeah, he always treats us right when he wins." That was a legit phrase that she said, I kid you not. Paula says, "So what? We got a gym, now you've got to take it from us."
Yeah, seriously, what did you expect from this game?
The strange boy fumes, "Take them out so I can win. This is completely unfair." "I'm sorry, man, but that's part of the game."
What are you gonna do, man? Cry about it to your parents? Shut up, don't make me hurt you. I'll beat all of you up, you won't hit me, I dare you.
Frank says, "Kid, if you try to hit me, I guarantee I will knock your butt on the ground." As if there was a hand from God giving him the boost, this kid takes a swing at Frank, and without hesitating, Frank moves over to the left to avoid being punched. So the kid hits the food stand behind him. Then, in one swift motion, Frank pops this kid in the face, knocking him down and onto the floor. One daughter runs over to her brother while the other one runs away, presumably to go and get their parents. Paula says to me, "I bet you $10 we're getting another story for the internet." I'll take those chances. And not even 10 seconds later we hear, "My poor baby!" Sure enough, here comes this obvious Karen with her daughter being yanked behind her as they storm through the crowd to find her beloved son on the floor with blood coming out of his nose.
How could you monsters do this? He's my sweet child and you made him ugly. What the frick do you have to say for yourselves?
Frick off. It's because that runt started it. That's what we have to say for ourselves. Frank was immediately rewarded with high fives from both me and Paula. Soon enough, this man in his late 30s helping an older man in his early 60s comes up to the scene and starts yelling at us too. "Karen, what happened here?" Oh my god, her actual fricking name is Karen. What are the odds?
According to our daughter, my baby was trying to talk to these boys, and they just attacked him.
Paula had her jaw drop, basically. Me and Frank had this look of, "Here we go again," and I already felt my wallet feel $10 heavier. The old man chimed in, I'm sure there's more to it than that." At which his son said, "Dad, these people hurt your grandson. You're not upset?" The dad was treating his son. The daughters were running around annoying other people who were watching. The entitled mother was up in our face like we did something wrong. The daughters were shouting, "Mommy is mad, Daddy's mad. How about I call the police on you three boys and ruin your lives for attacking my child?" Frank asks, "How old is this kid? He looks like he's in his 20s. I say, "Probably still is. Still living with his parents, just means he didn't get into college."
Shut up, both of you. My husband works for the state police, and we will be happy to send you to the island prison.
Paula cut in, "Are you talking about Alcatraz? The prison that's closed?"
You stupid kid, I hope you get screwed in the butt and some inmate bites your wang off.
Paula had her hair tied up behind her and she had a baseball cap on. Her clothes were fairly loose and you couldn't see her figure. We pieced together later why Karen couldn't tell this. Grandpa says, "Don't mind Karen, she's just flustered right now." Frank, "Listen to your elders, they know more than you." "Hey sir, how old is this boy?" Karen tries to take control back.
What does that have to do with anything? You hit my boy.
"Not you, I meant your grandpa. He's 25. Karen treats him like a king, so he thinks he is one."
I do not. You just don't know the new style of parenting.
Giving him $500 when he asked to go to the movies during finals week and going to Disneyland every other weekend with your daughters is the new parenting? "Not funny, Dad," says the entitled dad. The son by this point had gotten off the ground and was mad. He hopped up and charged straight at us. In a moment of dumb ideas, we took off and spread out immediately. I ran towards the nearby stairs and bolted through the sand. Frank and Paula also split up and ran elsewhere. I turned around and I guess because I picked the stairs that were literally in eyeshot, this son ran after me. I'm going to be honest here. I'm not going to make up a lie like I ran track so I dusted him, or I'm a pro wrestler so I fought him, or anything like that. I'm actually really out of shape. So it didn't take long for this son to catch up to me. But one thing about me is that I'm quick to move. I can duck and turn on a dime like you wouldn't believe. So every time the son got close to me, I'd duck to avoid a punch he might have thrown, and then start running a different way. At some point, he learned, so he started kicking. If I had to guess, this lasted about 5 minutes. Then my brain decided to run into a nearby parking lot. At this point, I'm winded, and so is the son, if I had to guess. There were still plenty of cars parked, so I ran behind a truck, ducked down, and rolled underneath. I could see him running around the truck and going straight past me without detecting me. As I'm waiting, I pull out my AirPods and call Frank. While I'm on the phone, I get out from the truck and start running back up the pier. Frank says, "Dude, where are you?" "Probably half a mile skinnier than what I was earlier. Where did you and Paula bounce to?" "I booked it to the underside of the pier. Paula ran to the changing room and just hid in there. Smart. I think I lost the entitled kid when I hid under a random truck I found. Are you serious? You hid under a truck? Sure, why not? Just meet us at the hotel. I think I've had enough of entitled jerks for one trip. And sure enough, we made it to the hotel without getting caught. The first thing we did was we used the group chat we have to tell our sides of the stories. Then we left to go and get food. And that's about it. No police as far as we can tell, but one hell of an exercise. Moral of the story, make sure you take on your friend's bet. You'll often win. Honestly, the fact that this kid is willing enough to throw hands in front of his mum and grandparent would suggest that they must have seen him initiate physical fights before. So what's with the mum and dad instinctively rushing to his aid and suspecting the others of starting the fight, when this definitely must have happened before now? Also, right up until you brought up the so-called kid's age, I was just assuming that he was in his early teens. Little did I realize my guess was only about halfway there. I don't know what's going on, or whether there were maybe some learning difficulties going on with the son, but the fact that no such things were mentioned by the parents, grandparents, and the implication that he was just kind of a 25-year-old man-child do make it a little easier to root against him. A 25-year-old man-child who hangs out on the California boardwalk and fights kids who beat his score on Pokémon Go. You know where to find him, singles. An entitled mother insists that I share my Nintendo Switch with her child on my flight. This just happened the other day, and after sharing this story with friends and family, a few of them suggested that I share it here. The scene is a Southwest Airlines flight. I was sitting in a window seat next to two lovely women, and directly horizontal from us was an empty seat, a mum and her son. The flight was taking off. For those who don't know, you're required to stay seated and keep your seatbelts on for the beginning of the flight until the captain says otherwise. I was strapped into my seat and decided to take out my Nintendo Switch from my carry-on beneath my feet. Then I hear, "Excuse me, ma'am?" I didn't realize at first that the mother in the seats horizontally from me was trying to get my attention. She unbuckled her belt and moved to the empty seat closer to me. "Ma'am, with the video game." I lifted my head, but the stranger next to me nudged me as well. "That lady wants to get your attention," the woman next to me muttered. I turned my head to see this woman leaning across the aisle with her hands on the armrest of the aisle seat in my row. "Sorry," she began. "I just wanted to know if there was any way that my son could use that game for a little while." "I'm so sorry," I began. "My Nintendo Switch is just really important to me. I don't feel comfortable giving it to anyone I don't know. I don't even let my sisters play with it." I was going to continue, but the woman cut me off. "Oh, my son's not like most kids," she replied. "He's not destructive. His cousin has one of those and he knows how to play." She smiled and set her hand out. The two women seated next to me looked at me as if they were also in disbelief. "I'm sorry," I said again. "I just don't feel comfortable. I brought it for me." "How old are you?" the woman said with a huff, retracting her hand and slapping it on her lap. "I'm 25, but I don't see how that matters," I replied, growing exceptionally uncomfortable. "Well," she began, clearly sounding agitated, "my son is 8. This is an hour and 45-minute flight and he just wants something to do. He can't see it for a few minutes?" "No, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm sorry, but I'm expecting you to understand since this is my property." I put my head down and I unpaused my game as to ignore anything further she had to say. "Are you serious?" She seemed genuinely livid. "Well, Bobby, sorry buddy, not everyone knows how to share." She said this to the kid next to her. Her child started whining and kicking the seat in front of him. "Thanks for this," she said to me. "A sweet kid just wants to share with you and you're being ignorant about it." Before I even opened my mouth, one of the ladies in my row snapped back at her. "How dare you bring that energy on this plane? She told you so kindly that she doesn't feel comfortable with passing her electronics to a stranger." But the mother wasn't having any of it. "She's an adult and can't share with a child for a few minutes of a nearly 2-hour flight." "You should have bought something for him to do then," the woman in my row responded. That shut her up good. At the end of the flight, the woman collected her luggage from the overhead bins and said, "I hope you're happy going against God's word, not sharing with a child." Some of the people around us were laughing. I'm sure that they all overheard the drama at the beginning of the flight. I've come across some entitled people in my life, but this strange lady really took the cake. Am I the jerk for not sharing? Wild! I am curious which of God's specific words this was that she was talking about. Either this is a very liberal application of one of the parables, or, and hear me out, Modern editions of the Bible are just going completely wild with the new modern inclusions that they have in them. I can't say which. If I buy a Bible today, maybe I'll be able to find the "Thou shalt covet thy neighbor's Nintendo" commandment in Exodus. The ladies sitting with our author are 100% correct. The mum just needs to pack more to entertain her kid. This duty is not on strangers, and I would be livid if the mum didn't stop the kid from kicking the seat in front of him. Because guess what? That's not on the author either. And I should stress, it is fine to ask strangers for things like this, if a little weird. What's not fine is kicking up a fuss if they very fairly say no. It's not something you can expect. Well, that's enough caring for today. See you next time, folks. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.